Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ron Swallow.
I'm Ed Greer, and
Uh,
today we're going to talk about. I think, I think it's a hard thing for all of us in pop culture to wrestle with. What we're about to talk about today, we're going to talk
yeah,
about how childish is too childish. What is the line in the sand between what mature people should be arguing about and feeling all types of ways about, and what is not? We're going to try to have that conversation today.
it's an interesting conversation on a lot of levels. I mean, the one joke I do about people making getting upset about me being upset about different things with Spider-Man or whatever, and it's a
Hmm.
joke, so it's a joke. But also, you know, if you grow up learning morals and learning things from comic books and fantasy books and those sort of things, like how to make good moral decisions, and you don't learn that from other places, I can see where people can become upset when you start messing with that stuff. um, but at the same time, um, getting real mad when, I don't know, He-Man isn't in Masters of the Universe as much as you would like, for instance, and like real mad, not like, oh, I kind of don't like that, but like, you have ruined my childhood and I despise you now, Kevin Smith, or anybody else, George Lucas, or the number of other people who people have said ruined their childhoods. I don't know if that's a level of maturity that we should be living up to.
Yeah, I think overall, obviously not. But what's interesting to me is we had an episode last week, and Alden Diaz said sometimes people become more of a fan of Star Wars fandom or a fan of themselves than a fan of the thing they're acting like they're a fan of.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, he wouldn't say this, but I'm saying this about some of the people on this He-Man jazz. You're just chasing the dragon of feeling like you were 5.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just chasing that dragon, and nothing will ever catch that. Having a wife, kids, serving in the military, becoming president, ain't none of that better than running down on Christmas morning as a 5-year-old and seeing He-Man down there. None
Yep.
of that shit can beat that feeling, period. And that's
Yep.
why these fools are ODing on it, dude. They're just like, please, oh my God,
Please,
that
please make
feeling.
me feel like I don't have responsibilities.
Oh, that feeling of being 5 and playing with them toys, dude, and the ultimate power of, yo, okay, this guy, this tan guy, literally has lightning coming out of the sword. He rides a tiger to work. You can't beat it. You're 5. That's your fantasy of what life is going to be. Ride a big cat down to the job. Hot chick is there. Her dad's there, cock blocking you though. That's cool. And but later, when you put the Man at Arms toy away, Tila and He Man can get down. There's this whole world you build in your head when you're a little kid playing with those toys, and these fools are chasing that dragon, and I get it. But like the old He-Man cartoons were not good. The
No.
subsequent reboots, most of the time, were not good. Some of them had good scenes. Even this new one, not trying to be blasphemous, it's got some good scenes. It's got some good stuff. I don't think it's super great, but I think hating it because He-Man isn't in it, being invincible every second, is just, to me, as a story person, I think that's whack. Why would
Yeah.
you, in a Superman movie, they find ways to remove the super part from the equation almost as much as they can so that you appreciate when Superman gets super. Even in the most rudimentary kind of bad Superman movies, they do that. It's
Yeah.
part of the storytelling with you when you have an invincible character. Maybe Kevin Smith took it too far for certain people's tastes, but to be that mad about it again, you're just mad you're not 5. You're just mad you're not 5, and you're just mad that this cartoon didn't give you the feeling that you got when you ran home from school all breathy and threw your backpack down and sat in front of the TV and turned this shit on. The fact that this didn't make you feel like that is not a reason to persecute it. You're more mad about that than Tila's burly shoulders, I think. That's what
Yeah.
I think.
I 100% agree. And at the same time, though, there's a line, right? Like, what's the line of enjoying things that are considered youthful, I guess,
Mm.
because like I love comic books, you love comic books, and
Mhm.
there are plenty of people who read Shakespeare and read deep literature and that sort of thing that would consider comic books childish.
Mhm. Mhm.
It just would.
Mhm.
I think they're missing out on stories that are there, but sometimes they're also semi right. So what is the line of that? Like, what
Well,
what
I
makes you
think
become too childish, and what makes you still be in a line of just enjoying something that's great art or interesting art to you? I should say.
well, I think that's kind of where you kind of look at it where are some of these people enjoying the people who made the cartoons? Like, do some of these guys who are just super hating on this new one, can they pull out stills that they bought? I'm sure some of them can. I'm sure most of them can't. Like, those cells that they sell from
Yeah,
Filmation. Can you pull out some of those? Can you pull out some knowledge of like beyond what you saw in a Netflix documentary or something? Can you go deep on, some of the people who are integral to the designing of He-Man and the lucky strikes along the way and all these different things and just the development process that He-Man went through too. It was designed to appeal to 5-year-old kids. So like you being so mad about it right now is creepy, dog, no matter how you slice it. No matter how you slice it, dude. Because
yeah,
like obviously, as different comic book properties have come along, they've had books for all sorts of ages of people.
yeah.
He-Man was never marketed to anybody under any circumstances as a mature product ever. It'd be like saying that, like, why is my love of Barney not as cool as your love of Star Wars? If you don't understand the difference between those, or maybe even the difference between like you love the Punisher, I love Barney, or whatever the fuck, there's different there's different products that are for different people, and like you clutching up on this 5-year-old kid's product is weird to me, especially when, like I said, if any time within the last 30 years we'd seen a dope ass He-Man that was violent, like he's stabbing dudes with a sword for real, he's slicing people up, he's doing real barbarian shit, and then jumping on a damn Blade Runner Sky Cycle after he does some barbarian ass Conan shit. If I ever saw that, I'd be like, wow, that's pretty hardcore, dude. A dude in a loincloth just killed some dudes with a sword and then jumped on a space bike and rode off to go meet up with his talking tiger. This is some hardcore shit, dog. But it's never happened, and it's never going to happen because it's for kids and it's for I don't know, man.
Also, there's no story. There's no
It,
story. There's no story
yeah,
in He-Man.
yeah.
There's not one story. And you know what? That's okay because it's
Well,
for
they
kids.
have, but just as a quibble, they have a bunch of lore. I would argue
Yes.
that you're still right that there's not a bunch of story, but yeah, they have a
There's
bunch of lore.
who improves, who gets better in that show.
It's supposed to be a cycle. That's another thing. I think the last super juvenilia in regards to nothing is ever going to happen with it that I really clutch up on is Marvel Comics and the stuff where that nothing can change. Anything that you like where you kind of know that nothing can change, that's your kid shit because that's designed for this perpetually young audience or this perpetually aging audience that wants to feel young and wants things to be a certain status quo. They just want to read a new, interesting way for Batman's fist to connect to Joker's face. There are 50-year-old, 60-year-old guys out there who every damn Wednesday go down to the store and just want to see the next way the fist is going to connect with Joker's face. And if you change Batman's fist to a black fist, you got a problem. If you change, this, that, the other, you got a problem. So it's just like, I don't know, man. It's this continuous cycle of older and older people being obsessed with this juvenilia because life is really hard, bro. Like, you know what I
Okay,
mean?
so do we want to kind of try to guess why people are holding on to that? I mean, we know part of that is you want the kid, you want to feel like that they had that feeling back you had when you were a kid. But like wrestling fans, for instance, when I was a kid, I was a wrestling fan.
Hmm.
But I know a lot of people who grew up and stayed wrestling fans. But I also feel like it makes sense. You grow as a wrestling fan because At first, when you're a kid, you're like, this stuff is crazy. Look at all this colorful stuff. This is so fun. But then when you get a little older, you go, oh, look at this drama they put into this wrestling match. Look how skilled these dudes are who are
Mhm.
putting on tights and putting on a character. And you know that they're fake now. Now you know what they're doing, but you still love it because you like almost like the shine. Like I'm not a big wrestling fan right now, but I get it. Like there's some sense to me, there's some stuff to admire in that. I I loved Scooby Doo as a kid. There is almost nothing to admire in Scooby Doo. Almost nothing. I mean, the art is not bad actually. Like some of the cartooning for that time period, especially, was like pretty great. But other than that, I'm like, what is like? There's no story in Scooby Doo. Scrappy's
Well,
gonna do the
see,
same stuff. Scooby's gonna do the same stuff. No one's gonna get better. Like, and is that okay? Is that too childish, or is it okay for something to just be the same all the time?
well, I mean, but that's the thing. I think for so-called kids and youth, oriented media, uh it's got to stay the same. You're gonna mess it up if you mess it up. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, Scooby Doo goes on into history. Fred becomes a master detective. Oh, wait a minute. And Velma became a bio sciences person, and yada yada. And they still kept up their crime fighting team. Oh, wait, by the way, Scooby died. So Scrappy's the dog. We just call him Scooby now. Don't worry about it. Scooby definitely died, though. Scooby, it's just like, what's the point of that?
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
true.
mean?
It's hard because I I I love some good books that I probably shouldn't. I like some books that are bad that I probably shouldn't like, that aren't very mature. Like I love some comic books that aren't very mature. So where tell me, Ed, give me the answers.
Well, no, I think it's like where do you draw the line in regards to how mad you are? Because I think there are things that we've talked about. Don't like this or that, the other about this particular version of a character. But
Okay.
when it comes down to like, okay, you, me, and all of our friends are gonna launch a letter writing campaign. We're gonna review bomb shit. That's like too
Yeah.
far. To
We're
me,
gonna
that's like
dox somebody.
that's way too far for that particular transgression, if you want to call it that. You know what I mean? That's psychotic to like push it past that level, to push it to the limit, and mess people up like that. That's ridiculous. So I just really think there are ways for you to relate that you are angry about a thing. You can make your own art. You can do a YouTube video. You know what I mean? That's great. Do a YouTube
Yeah.
video, talk your shit. But even it's funny how YouTube has become like so much like if you watch a video that says that such and such movie wasn't that good, you will be recommended a bunch of dudes who just hate on everything as an industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The algorithm will hook you up with some shitty fuckers.
It's
You know
almost
what I
like the
mean?
same way that, like, if you're like, "Hey, I kinda don't trust the government." Okay, well, what about these aliens that have taken over the government? How about that? And you're like, "Wait, what?" Like,
Oh, what
did
what
we
is
need to make
something
that big a jump?
what is something you've related on this podcast? How one of the last things where you were like kind of a I don't want to say toxic fan, but definitely obsessed enough to track the writer down and write them a letter was Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the last things. So like for me, as you've probably seen on podcast, the last couple few years I've been able to look back on some of the things I said on podcasts, and my obsession with Batman at some point was bordering on psychotic. Like just what Batman should do, what Batman should be. There's so many different damn Batmans. Some asshole out there thinks Batman is a funny dude who swashbuckles and he's got some cool gadgets. And every now and again, he goofs off and he messes up, but he always gets him in the end with a smile. That's what that
Because
person
of the
really
Lego
thinks
Batman.
Batman is, or just from a billion different things
Yeah.
across 75, 80 years. So it's not up to me to be like to impress upon the universe my dumb take of this solitary psycho. more Moon Knight than Batman as psycho person that I have in my head. That would be probably the most effective Batman, according to me and only
Yeah.
me. But you know what I'm saying? Because like all this, like I got a bunch of kids around me and all this different shit. Maybe he would indoctrinate some people, but they definitely wouldn't be his buddies, and they definitely wouldn't know who he was. He would like drop them off care packages to go beat people up at night with, you know what I'm saying? But he definitely
Yeah.
wouldn't have them all up in the cave and shit. Nah, that doesn't make any sense. That ties you to a bunch of youth crimes and ties you, as a person who goes out with a bunch of kids and fights crime. That's dumb. Have the kids fight alongside you, indoctrinate them and everything. Yeah, I could see him doing that because he's psycho and he really believes that what he thinks is super right. But according to me, he would never just have a bunch of short pants kids up in his house doing stuff. That's stupid. Nobody would do that. That's psychotic to me. That's weird on many levels that I don't want to discuss right now. It's just so nuts that that's the way people have just accepted that Batman operates. Anyway, as you can see, I'm still too obsessed with Batman, too obsessed with thinking it out as a real thing or like how to refine it as this thing in my head, this headcanon that I've made. And that energy can be a funny little ditty on a podcast, or it can be a screed for 5 months against Brie Larson or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That energy can go a lot of ways.
It's these guys who I think it's the same guys who were like who think high school was the best years of their life. Whenever you meet someone who's like, high school is the best years of my life, I'm like, that means your life is very sad
Well,
because it shouldn't be.
yeah, I would argue that some of them definitely. I don't think their high school years were very good. And I think that's kind of where a lot of this anger comes from. But I do get what you're saying in regards to like, and when things are simple and aren't challenging me at all, those are the best times. When I was 5, running down the hallway to get some He-Man toys.
Yep.
When I was fucking 16, and me and my dad built a fucking Mustang back, from the grave, and he let me drive it to prom. Oh yeah, I scored 4 touchdowns. Whatever.
Yeah.
All of that stuff are these dragons that fools are chasing. And again, I get it, dude. I get it. That's why, a lot of people have this weird mechanism where they just put their greatest years in the future, no matter how many times they know that they did what they came to do. Like there are dudes that are 60 right now who did what they came to do on this earth around 32. And this last 30 years has just sort of been just a meandering nothing. But they did it. And they was 32, they did it. They had that hit record, they had that hit thing, they did this, they made Legos, whatever the fuck. And this last section of time has just been sort of coasting on that, or just sort of doing speaking engagements about that time back then that they did that. And I just think a lot of I do that myself. I put my best shit in the future. Like some of those guys who are living that lifestyle still think, hey man, even though I do speaking engagements about this thing I did 30 years ago, I have this idea. I sketched it out on a plane. Tell me what you think of it. Guy man. And it's just like, dude, you don't have it anymore, Morty. You don't have it anymore. Guy man sucks.
Guy
You know what
man
I
is a
mean?
terrible idea. No, no, listen. It's like he's a guy who's a man. You know what I mean? Like he's a guy who's manly. Yeah. He wears tank tops. People people call him guy. That's not his name, but they still call him guy. You know what I mean? Guy man.
Yeah, and he comes with an extra wife beater. Now I know you can't say wife beater, so person beater, woman person beater, whatever you gotta say to make it politically correct. He comes with an extra one of those in the package. And I'm like,
Sir, I
no.
believe that's called a Y shirt. I believe it's called a Y shirt. No, no, no. That's a person beater. I'm 100% sure.
So all I'm saying is like there are, we talked about the chasing the dragon, but we also talked about like the fact that a lot of this media that's made to appeal to kids is made by old dudes who understand the feelings of kids, the feelings of inadequacy, the feelings of like everything's ahead of me, but I need something right now. Little kids feel like they're supposed to be in an adventure right now, which is why Robin is such a great invention, so that kids can glom on to Robin and be like, I'm Robin. and then one day
Yep.
I'll be Batman. And then that's why they started having Robin be able to be Batman. And like a bunch of people were just like, oh, I love Dick Grayson Batman more than anything because you love the fact that you basically are now Batman. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's great. I'm not trying to be junior high psychologist over here. I'm just saying, like, when you are attacking people on boards and Discord channels and shit, you're getting together into your weird little echo chambers and you're being like basically shitty to people who like certain things. Like I got into a little tete-a-tete about New Trek, which frankly I see like now there are so many people of so many different ages who have glommed on to a certain aspect of Star Trek, even though Star Trek changes so much each iteration is
Yeah.
way different than the last. If somebody tuned in from 1962 and watched TNG for the very first time, they were like, what is this?"
Yeah.
They were really weirded out by that Klingon on the bridge, all that stuff. So it's just like people don't remember how aghast people were at TNG. So now people who worship TNG and worship Voyager and worship DS9 look at New Trek like it's just the ugliest, nastiest thing in the world and it's betraying all their ideals, blah, blah. That's exactly how those old people looked at New Trek. I mean, I looked at TNG. The
Yeah.
old, those
Unless
people
you,
looking at
unless you,
TNG, ugh.
unless they read Gene Roddenberry, and then they really, really liked TNG. That seems to be a thing that coincides with that. Um, because TNG was a little more like what Roddenberry kind of wanted.
Mm-hmm,
The original, I will say, having a black lady doing anything
mm-hmm,
back in the 60s was insane. So that part was great. um, but like, other than that, the stories weren't really super about like learning about different cultures and et cetera, which is kind of what Gene Roddenberry wanted it to be adventurous, an adventurous group of people who learned about everything out in the galaxy, and their
mm-hmm.
goal was to keep growing and learning and being better people.
Yep.
And that's TNG is definitely a little more of that. They still had some problems, of course, but you also
Mhm.
it makes for bad TV if all you're ever doing is learning about someone and then understanding them, and then that's the end of the episode.
Well, but there's always that misunderstanding at the
That's
outset,
true.
or that person who's trying to sabotage the relations, or that person who's trying to hide the fact that they have taken over somebody's body to get off of this planet in time before the summer solstice, where their skin will come off or whatever. There's all these
Yeah,
different ways and plot devices, or like somebody came onto the ship with an ancient rune that these other aliens are trying to get to, and they all have shape shifting powers. You know, two delegations that hate each other are on the Enterprise at the same time. There's just so many different things you can throw in there to make stories happen. And I think we've come across something where I understand people being juvenile about TNG on some level, but it's only because TNG got into my head when I was a little kid. And
that could be me too.
you know what I'm saying? I respect TNG as something greater than He-Man. Is it really? I'm not here to make that judgment, but I personally do think that I'm not condoning anybody becoming a real racist fascist and calling it Star Trek love. I'm not condoning that, but like there are people who have like questions about these new Star Trek products because they are, like a lot of people, mired in what was there when they were kids,
Yeah,
and they don't realize that, again, when you were a little kid, you can see different uh types of shit and put it in your head. Like as a little kid, I never watched the old school Star Trek, not ever one time. My very first introduction to TNG, or rather to Star Trek, was TNG. So that when I was a kid and I tried to watch the old one, I was like, this sucks. This is like good Star Trek, but worse in every way. That sentence I just said is violence to a certain generation of people, a certain
yeah,
generation of influential people. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
it's like that's interesting to me how it's like a lot of this shit that you revere, it just happens because of what date you were born on a calendar, or what date your hip dad dropped you in front of something.
I mean,
That
half the music we like
determines.
is that.
Oh, definitely music shit. music, that part is crazy. It's crazy how much I hold on to like Wu Tang and Czarface and MF Doom and Most Def like a fucking, you know, life preserver in a storm as far as musical taste, because it's like that's when I was spry. I felt like a person when those bands were on top, and that's,
But
you know, it just becomes a thing.
is that the only stuff you listen to?
It is the only, it's the stuff that I like the most though. I could
Okay. Well,
suffer.
see,
I could, you know.
here's the thing I think about is I think part of this is growing as a person. And I don't mean growing up. I don't mean growing up in the traditional sense of the word, but I think it's growing as a person. So if you had asked me when I was a kid, what was good music, there would have been maybe three answers. It would have been like metal, hard metal, the hardest metal, and some grunge. And like, if you would ask me if anything else was good, I would have said no.
Hmm.
But if you ask me that today, no, of course, I like a huge variety of music. There's a few things I dislike, like, you know, country. I don't like country. But even that, I like Johnny Cash. I like that Tennessee Whiskey song. You know, like I think
Hmm.
that counts as country. You know, like it's you know, I like bluegrass. I didn't even know bluegrass existed when I was a kid, but I grew up, I learned about different music, and my mind expanded. And I think that a
Hmm.
lot of these people are stuck in a non-mind expanding world where who
Hmm.
they are, they've never had to be a different person. They were probably pretty decent as kids. Like they probably didn't get in a lot of trouble, but they didn't do anything great either. They just kind
Hmm.
of went through their life just doing whatever they were doing.
Hmm.
And there's been no reason for them to grow as a person.
Hmm.
Like I have a feeling that a lot of these people, and I don't even want to call them privileged as much as just no static in their life,
Hmm.
no pushing in their life, no nothing that made them have to grow into a mind expanding person. Like
Hmm.
there's no reason for their mind to expand because they got done with high school and then their uncle worked at the warehouse and they got him a job at the warehouse and they've moved up in the warehouse doing these couple of jobs that they've done. They're not great at their job, but they're good at their job. Like they get the thing done and they get paid and they can afford their apartment or house or whatever it is they do. And they're regular people. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also nothing expanding about that. And I think a lot of the people that we see that are like obsessed with this stuff are unhappy that they haven't expanded, but they don't even know it. I don't know if that makes
Mm.
any sense.
Well, no, no, no. I think that is an interesting tack, because it's almost like as long as I can have this entertainment thing stay the same, then that's part of the old feelings I can have. Like every
Yeah.
time they redo it, if they do it right, then I'll get this package of endorphins to pop off. And that'll remind me of all the batshit, you know, when I was a little kid, when they have people come out of the theater. Sometimes guys will straight up say, "Made me feel like I was five again," or whatever. They'll straight up say it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I definitely get that that is like part of the arrested development thing or whatever. But again, I don't want to make it like some kind of weird judgment like we don't do that, because again, we're in the business of being like, yeah, we do that shit. And
Yep.
this is interesting analysis about it, blah, 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 the whole kayfabe. But the thing is, I feel like part of it is breaking my brain to be like the cognitive dissonance of giving a blank about Batman but being mad at somebody for getting in a huff about He-Man. The dissonance is weirding me out a little bit, because like
Okay.
it's all about when you saw something. You know what I'm saying? When you saw it, when you got, I God forbid some kid in the future, like in the future, there's gonna come out action movies are gonna come out that make John Wick look like shit. And some kid that's 10 right now is obsessed with John Wick. He's gonna
Yeah.
fight somebody in a Walmart parking lot oh, because the guy got John Wick in the 5.99 bin, and somebody made fun of him for it or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people get attached to stuff at certain parts in their life, and they're willing to ride or die for it. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think about my love of the damn NBA as a grown ass person who knows that these are basically the most high paid indentured servants ever, and the this whole machinery is made around exploiting them since they were like 12, 13 years old, and all of this wheeling and dealing and shipping guys over here, shipping guys over there, and uh team presidents being called owners, and people being said to be, this guy's owned by that guy. A lot of that stuff, and especially the NFL, but even in the NBA, should be totally distasteful to the person I have matured into.
Yeah.
But they got me when I was a kid, and I love the dunks. I love the dunks, baby. I love them. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And that's kind of like, that's what it is. I think there's this so much room in our heads for so many conceptions of certain things, and so many like exceptions for stuff. Like I like the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're by far not the worst of the offenders in being crappy towards Native Americans. But they're on the list, buddy. They're
Yeah.
definitely on the list. And
Well,
they're part of the NFL, which is, and again, in their home opener, they got booed for suggesting that equality was cool.
yep.
People booed the concept of equality. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
there's this compartmentalization in your head that goes on all day, every day. And you become one of these Twitter weirdos that's like, I hate everything. I don't eat meat. I don't listen to sound because sound occasionally kills birds. I walk around with earmuffs. I don't say anything. I don't bump into anybody. I don't man spread on the subway. I don't say stuff like lame because that's ableist. I don't, that this type of
Yeah.
person who's just like prepared for whatever you got. They're ready to be on the right side of history on everything you're ready for. Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. They just do like this, just dodging back and forth to be on the right side of history, moment to moment, even.
Yeah.
And that's a personality, I guess, And when you combine somebody like that with an intense love of like old shit or intense love of pop culture to the point where they're like gonna fight you over the Joker movie. Like you called them an edgelord for loving the Joker movie, and now they got 57 Devil's Advocate essays to fire back at you that they just been waiting to drop because
Yeah.
they're a fucking graphomaniac like that dude in Seven. You know what I mean? It's just like, and see, they would bristle at being compared to that because I'm
Yeah.
dismissing their plight and all this kind of shit. It's like we keep building these different types of motherfuckers who at some point in time get obsessed with something. The concept of the Joker as this constant loser who is insane only because he knows how insane the world is. These guys do all this mental
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
gymnastics to make the Joker a good character, to make his continuous loserdom something cool because they vibe with that. They glom onto that. He-Man, the feeling of being invincible. Superman, Bill has it. Bill is 6'5", 240, and still looks up to a guy that flies and is impenetrable because it's the greatest feeling that anybody can have, is to be
Yeah.
totally invulnerable, totally the master of any situation that they're in, and totally responsible for whether the situation goes good or bad. That
Yeah.
is the ultimate in responsibility, the ultimate in like noble shit to like look up to. That's why Superman heads really get mad when you fuck with their boy. The people who, that got into their bloodstream when they were like 5 to 8 to 12, whatever,
Yeah.
they're really ready to go down.
I mean, I guess like, now that I've become a creative person, and since I've been a creative person for so long, I just want a good story, I guess, in those situations. And if I don't have a good story, I kind of don't like it. And,
But it's not a good story if Tila's in it way more than He-Man, dummy. See,
well,
that's where they go.
obviously. Yeah.
You know what I
Well, and
mean?
it's funny, you mentioned like being a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I was a 49ers fan for literally 15 years. I could tell you tons of history. I could have told you players,
Mhm.
stats, all of that stuff. I do not know who is on the 49ers right now. I don't know who the quarterback is, and I don't know if I care. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm trying to figure out why that is. And I realized it's because I gave up on the idea that I would ever play football a long time ago.
Mhm.
Um, so that paying attention to football became less important.
Mhm.
Um, and I enjoy reading books more than I enjoy watching sports. Uh,
Mhm.
I just do, and I don't know why that is. I guess because I like to live in a, you know, some other land. Maybe maybe, maybe that's where I'm childish. Like, I personally feel like the world is, super messed up and full of it's it's crazy to me that 1/3 of the population is just plain stupid, and it may be more, but at least 1/3 of the population are stupid people, and I don't like it.
Well, but what
So
first of all, you have to define stupid, and second of all,
oh, you're
it
right.
is in that regard, however you define it, it is what does it mean for you for somebody to be stupid? Is it because they're an impediment to actual any sort of progress or something like that? Is that why you don't
That
like
is a
them?
portion of it. That's a portion of it, but it's more just that they 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 believe what they want to believe without delving deeper into subjects, and if it matches something that feels okay to them, they
Mhm.
never doubt it.
Mhm.
They just immediately believe that thing. They don't look beyond their circle ever, and I think I define that as kinda stupid, and, you
Mhm.
know, I guess the problem is that, like, believing like, there's just we've I mean, maybe I'm bringing this up too much, but, in the last few podcasts, but there are tons of people, and when I say tons, I mean in the millions of people, and about approximately about a third of the people that exist that really think that like, the Earth isn't round. It's not a third of the people, but, like, there's, like, a 1/18th of the population that thinks that, and and then there's another group of people who, they believe that, human beings were made by aliens, by splicing Bigfoot, and they really believe this, dude. Like, it's not like they're like, "Hey, that's a funny story." They think that's what happened. Then there's another group of people who
Well, there's
think
the lizard people,
there's the
there's,
lizard
a lot
people, there's
a
the
lot of
all
that
these
stuff.
conspiracy theories that if you took 5 minutes and thought about it, you would know how stupid that is.
Well,
And
yeah, but
and
see that, but they would say that you're indoctrinated, baby, because you got all this
I know
damn
that.
book learning, and you don't know that the damn Anunnaki Bigfoots is out there with the lizard folk making sweet love in the dark. And then they, every time they come, their orgasm makes an EMP that knocks out everybody's goddamn lights. you know,
But there's people who believe that, dude, and a
yeah.
lot. In the millions of people who believe that stuff, and I don't wanna live in a world like that. I just don't. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like that these people exist. I would rather live in a fantasy world where people have everybody has those powers, so then, it doesn't matter how stupid people are because, well, now the stupid people might be right.
Well, I mean, I think it's one of these things where when you talk about like fantasy novels, right? Fantasy novels to me got put in the category of childish at some point when I was a kid. I
Yeah.
think that's really what happened, and that's why I don't grok to them that much. But then I realized that, and then I realized that I read sci-fi that was so-called quote unquote hard sci-fi. I wondered why it was so boring. Because it was like really like you got to find out through a 10-page monologue how the airlock works because
Yeah.
this ain't no fantasy airlock. I have researched the way airlocks work, and this is how.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you about it, and even down to their particular system for teleportation, or their particular system for most of these stories were such hard sci-fi. They wouldn't even have anything like teleportation in them. It would
Yeah.
be all about like living the real dull realities of living on a space station, and then a thriller breaks out, or a bunch of nanomachines break out, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That were the kind of novels that I would read. And at some point, that's where I drew the line in the sand of like, the line must be drawn here. I like Greg Bear. I like some of Mike Resnick. Some of his stuff is like not hard sci-fi at all, but they're all allegories for different places he's been, like Africa and Spain and wherever he's been.
Yeah.
He would go to all these places and gather up these like local sort of legends and stuff and make them into sort of a sci-fi novel. And like just like he's just a really wild dude that had a good eye for story, and I liked the way his stories seemed to be. Some in those books he would skip over all the hard sci-fi parts, but he would never have anything magical happen ever. They were all sci-fi. So
Okay.
like that, at some point I decided fantasy was childish, and I never gave it a chance ever since, basically.
And
you know
let me tell you, there's plenty of childish fantasy. Absolutely, there is. There's tons of it.
Yeah,
You know,
I like childish sci-fi too now, though. So it's like I give childish sci-fi a pass. Don't give childish fantasy a pass.
hey, that's where you live, you know. And look, I mean, maybe all fantasy is childish. You know, maybe it's childish
Yeah.
to not want to live in a regular world, and you think that it's really fun to think that you, maybe vampires exist and they're like real sexy. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's childish. I don't know,
Well, wait a minute.
but
That's one thing. Wait a minute. That strikes me funny. We never really called vampire people on how lame that was. Like as far as like attacking them en masse, I don't remember that. Because like a lot of them weren't even goths. They were just like these regular looking people that were super into these creatures who suck blood. They were like super into it. They loved True Blood a whole bunch with all that mumbo gumbo in there. They loved
yeah,
Twilight. They loved a lot of these things. So obviously some True Blood people didn't like Twilight and stuff, but like that whole genre of person that arose in the 90s and the 2000s, the Buffy, even the Buffy likers, they weren't
yeah,
necessarily liking vampires and Buffy, but like just the concept that all these demons and vampires and shit were coming out for you, and you had to be prepared, all this kind of jazz. That never got splattered with the smear of super nerd that I think it should have. Like, and the people who read the Anne Rice books, fucking nerds, man.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
some nerdy shit.
Yeah, I can't talk any smack. I've read almost all. I read like 13 of the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series. Um, the first like four are fun adventure romps, and then it just turns into sexy orgies. And then I was like, well, I guess I'll keep reading because the action's good, but this is getting a little okay. I gotta stop now. So I don't know. I don't know. You know, there's were tigers banging humans and vampires banging were tigers. I don't know. It's
So wait, so did you stop messing with it because it was childish or because it was puerile?
probably because it got a little over the top on the sexy times, and it's not my thing. I'm just not like into reading sexy sex times and the stuff. I like romance in a story, but I don't need orgies. I'm good.
Well, yeah, especially when they're just like fictional people. I mean, it's like even in porns, they're real people.
Yeah,
They say such and such porn star with such and such other porn star in such and such scene.
yeah,
So they're at least real people. They're not like
yeah.
drawings in some freakos. Dude, some guy looked at my sketchbooks and said that my stuff looked like R. Crumb drawings, and I was so offended because like R. Crumb could draw his ass off, but he draws a bunch of big butted, like basically monster women who get ridden by dudes like they're horses and shit. I'm just like, I don't do that shit, man. Come on, man. I don't
Oh
mess
man,
with that. Comics with an X. Uh, you know.
yeah,
But yeah, much respect to weirdos, but like, yeah, that was kind of to be compared to. But like, I think what we think of as childish should evolve over the course of time, but I think it doesn't as much as we think it should. You
Yeah.
know, and I think a lot of people who decide certain things are childish and then keep other things, like that's why I think sports and comics got trapped in my head the same way at the same time, so that I couldn't become one of these dorks that's like, don't like sports ball, you know, that whole thing, that whole
Yeah.
stereotype. It's like,
I love sports still. I mean,
you
I
know,
admire athletic people because you should. It's and fun. It's amazing to watch people at the height of 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 human capability. And
right,
that's what basketball and soccer and gymnastics and every single sport, most sports out there are insane. I used to make fun of synchronized swimming.
dude.
Don't. It's
Yeah,
insane what they do. They're doing flips under the water at the exact same time and then pushing each other out of the water. It's insane.
yeah,
All of this
yeah.
stuff, if you can't admire, like, I get it if you don't enjoy sports. There's nothing wrong with not enjoying sports. I'm not going to like criticize anybody who doesn't enjoy them, but you should also be able to be impressed by people doing these amazing physical things. It's
Well, I think that's the relationship a lot of people have with the Olympics, as far as like you talk about whether the Olympics childish or not. I think it's one of those things where if you're a little kid and you think of these are the best people at the best stuff all the time, that you can get kind of like you can deify Olympians a little bit. That's why they end up on
yeah,
Wheaties boxes and shit. But I think the older person looks at sports the way I think almost everybody mature looks at sports. It's like they don't really think about sports a whole bunch. And I'm not saying I'm mature because I think about sports a lot. I think about my teams a lot. But I think the regular person goes, when the Olympics come around, they go, oh, the Olympics are on. And if they're at a party or whatever, got some Tostitos in their hands, they sit down and they watch Simone Biles do the super dope thing. And they don't watch that 364 other days of the year, but they see it at that time and they respect it and they go, wow. And I think that's like a really appropriate, mature relationship with sports, period. And a lot of other things, frankly. It's like when it's in front of you, respect how fresh it is with the perspective of like, even an amateur's perspective, with any sort of goodwill at all, you can see how fresh the synchronized swimming people are, or the water
yeah.
polo dudes are, or whatever.
Shit, badminton. People who are
Yeah.
actually professional badminton players are insanely good at badminton, which is a thing you wouldn't think. Ping pong players? Ping pong players are insane.
Yeah,
They're
dude.
insane.
Hmm.
Like, it's things you think are, like, fun and silly. Like, there's people who are so good at those things, and it's cool to watch them and be impressed by them. I mean, sure, some sports bore me. I'm not gonna pretend that I love watching soccer. I just don't. And I
Hmm.
get it. There's a lot of mental parts of the game. Same with baseball. I know there's a bunch of mental parts of the game, and you're getting in someone's head. You're doing this, and you're being intimidating this way, and all these different skills to make people not be good. But also, nobody hits the ball, and nothing happens, and then everybody is out, and then that's the end. And that's and it bores me to death. And I think I'm allowed to be bored to death sometimes. Play
I used
golf. Watching golf is boring.
Well, see, and then so
Boring.
there are a million people yelling at their in their ear pods right now, going, "You suck," blah blah. But the thing is, the thing that they're yelling at you about, it got into their head when they were a little kid,
Yeah.
and they it became a part of their life when they were a little kid, and now you're assailing how fresh it is. Even though a million billion people on this earth play soccer, baseball is the pastoral America's favorite pastime. Blah blah.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
doesn't
but
mean anything to you,
yeah,
and
they're all art,
that's what's,
by the way.
interesting.
I'm not taking anything away from baseball players or soccer players. They're all unbelievable athletes. Like, I'm not taking away anything that it just bores me to
No, of
watch.
course not. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I like to
there's a
watch soccer. I like to watch football and basketball. Those are the 2 sports, and I actually can watch basketball anytime, any place, and I don't care about the teams because it's so amazing to watch basketball to me, like, because it's so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I won't bore anybody with how my super love of it. But because again, it's just something that got into my head when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
as I've aged, just like a wrestling or anything like that, I'm able to see like, oh, it's so dope that this team was able to maneuver the cap room to get this guy to play on their team. It's like graduated to
Oh
this
man,
super
that is
dork
nerdy.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's graduated to this super dork level. Like, dude, the last couple years, our GM Rob Pelinka has started out where people were like, "This stupid idiot doesn't have enough money to build a team around LeBron. Look at what they've only got amount of dollars." And then he does this and flips that and resigns this guy and trades this guy and And next thing you know, stack all these dope ass players. And it's just like everybody's pulling their hair out, like, how do they do that? And I'm over here. I'm a straight up Rob Palenka fan. And I'm like, you knew he was gonna do it. It's like a sport within a sport to
Yeah.
me. Like
That's
watching
interesting.
Rob Palenka do the crossover dribble on these other GMs and stack the Laker team, that's its own sport to me. And that's why I can't categorize it as childish, because it's evolved past, ooh, I love the Michael Jordan, he put it in the basket, to, all right, I got enough cap space to get this guy and that guy. Now I got to have Gerald Dudley on the team because he's a glue guy. He keeps everybody mentally calm. But you're thinking about all this different bullshit. And again, that goes back to the little kid aspect of wanting to be part of shit like that, wanting to be part of those sort of teams, wanting to either contribute on the team, help to build that team, help to develop skills of some of the guys on the team, shit like that.
Yeah.
All these different things where you can take a little bit of ownership over somebody else's dope accomplishment. That's something that kids do a lot.
Huh.
So when He-Man swings his sword, that's you, little kid, because you don't get to swing nothing and do nothing because you suck. You, fat old man sitting on your Barca lounger, could say that Tom Brady sucks ass and they threw an interception. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
he is representing you, and that's part of why you're so mad, because on your sick mind, on some level, you threw the interception because you were rooting for Tom Brady. You know what I mean? And there's this almost like remora like uh sycophancy to all of these fandoms that I think I might have just pissed people off by calling it that, but like that's what it is. It's this weird, you want to ride on the shoulder of Godzilla while he tears shit up. You want to be the thing that's powerful. That's why you hate Godzilla 98, even though Godzilla 98 sucked. I don't even like Godzilla, and that movie sucked. But a lot of Godzilla fans didn't like it because it wasn't the Godzilla of their childhood, which,
Yeah.
looking back on it, I think they were right. Maybe Broken Clock's right twice a day, right? But like a lot of people are just so mad that the thing isn't what it was when they were a kid. And I think that's what separates one's fandom from being childish or not, is is your argument that this property that has gone through probably 15 changes before you were aware of it. You know what I'm saying? Like people, okay, people got obsessed with the Ross Andrew Spider-Man of the 60s. So
Yeah.
when they saw Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man in the 90s, it blew their mind and they said that's not Spider-Man and it looks too crazy and stupid. But to a whole generation, that is Spider-Man and was Spider-Man. And he even influences artists to this day.
Yeah.
And then there are certain people who come along and say that John Romita is the guy who drew Spider-Man for them. And when they see Spider-Man in their head, they see a John Romita Jr. drawing or a John Romita Sr. drawing. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? All these
Yeah.
wherever they came into it, that's what they see. And I'm just saying, like, if you can't evolve your perspective on the thing that you like to encompass some of the new stuff, and you could even, I'd say some new things aren't that good. Everything that's new isn't good. You reserve the
True.
right to have that, but to get super upset that there are other versions of this thing that had 15 versions before you even glommed onto it, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
part makes me so fucking mad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I guess I'd love to use the quote from Rich Slayton, like, believe everything, and maybe even now, love everything you love at about the 60 to 70% range, guys. Don't be 100%. 100% makes you a maniac. Don't be 0%. That makes you just as crazy. Be
Yeah,
right in
just
the
like,
middle.
yeah, right. It's 60, 70%. Like, Don't be willing to do fisticuffs over He-Man or the new design of Snake Eyes or whatever. Because you know what? If you eat your Wheaties with the Olympian on the cover, you will live long enough to see a version that you like sometime down the pike, baby. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Or go make your own version. Go out and make your own version of Snake Eyes, your own version of He-Man. And it could
Oh,
be the
dude.
exact same thing of him picking up a boulder and throwing it, you know, at
Ah!
Skeletor or whatever,
Dude,
and
oh, wait,
Skeletor
okay,
being
wait.
like, "No, you got me,
No, right
ah!"
quick. We gotta flip and bounce. Like, okay, what's the off-brand He-Man? So he's like, okay, he's Guy Man, right? So like,
Yeah.
Guy Man is there, right? And he wears like it can't be barbarian stuff. So
No,
what
no,
is he?
no.
He
What's the
wears
opposite for a
like
barbarian? He probably wears, like, shiny clothing,
yeah. He dresses like a spaceman.
like from Solaris.
Yeah. So okay. So he yes, exactly. So he dresses like Solaris, and basically, or even Doctor Solaris with like like one of those weird jumpsuits on or something.
Yeah.
And it can't be Skeletor, so it's a guy with like too much face. Like
He's
because Skeletor doesn't have a face. Maybe there's a guy. It's got too much face.
he's got a
Maybe,
big head. He's just got a big
dude,
head.
we gotta promote many faces to the front.
Yeah,
Yeah.
many faces is in that too.
So, but anyway, I think He-Man fans need to fucking relax. But I think
And G.I.
it,
Joe fans, and Transformer fans, and
oh my god, yeah,
and I think
dude.
all kid cartoon fans, you need to chill out. Like, I honestly think you do.
Well, if it was used to sell you pieces of plastic, you might need to fucking relax. You know what I mean? Because when I was a kid, there weren't no goddamn X-Men toys. Really, there were these comics where I got to know them as characters, and for some reason, I think that's greater than being mad at something that was literally only devised to sell you pieces of plastic.
Yeah.
You know what I
I'm also
mean?
not gonna be mad about the X-Men unless it's not a good movie. I don't I don't care about, like, what changes they did. I mean, Marvel made tons of changes to these characters, tons of them, tons of
Hmm.
changes, and I enjoyed it because they
Yeah,
kept to the, like, basic theme of each character and personality and attitude of each character and the thing that makes them interesting. And they told a story that was interesting. I just want that. So
yeah, but okay. Well, in closing, though, I think the people who are again, it's become monetized to be a little kid about shit, to be a super
ah
stick in the mud about shit. You know what I'm saying? Like back in the days, if you were an old fuddy duddy, they retired you and told you to shut the fuck up. You know
yep
what I mean? But now, being sort of a fuddy duddy, being like, back in my day, Wolverine's claws were this long, not this long. Being that guy is like monetizable on the internet now.
yeah
You know what I mean? So I think last things last, we need to just stop capitulating to that. Stop letting the algorithm rile you up. You know what I'm saying? Like I just love for people to like tune into more even-handed criticism where I think we smack stuff with the front of our hand and the back of our hand. You know what I mean?
yeah
On this channel. So that's kind of all. I just want to do an ad for us because like when we shit on stuff, we try to look at why people still like it. And I think a lot of people are just like, if you like this, you were some kind of piece of shit, or you're some kind of so-called SJW. You're some kind of they say virtue signal, like ugh. You know
ugh
what I'm saying? They use
ugh
all these whack terms that they've come up with to identify people who are willing to just take two steps back and not be a total asshole
yeah
about a plastic toy marketing device that didn't give them the dopamine that they got when they were 5 running down that hallway.
yeah. The
That
virtue
you're
signal one
you know.
makes me the angriest. I gotta say, I know we're trying to end here, but
Mhm.
there's nothing more annoying to me who people are like, oh, you're just saying that because you're trying to get laid. No, I'm already getting laid because I have virtue, because I'm a good person. I don't need to do that. I'm saying what I believe, not to try to get laid, because that's what I believe. That's already gotten me laid. Like, what the fuck is happening? Sorry.
You're keeping up a pattern of behavior, just
Yeah.
like we're keeping up a pattern of behavior of putting out this podcast for free and putting out our Patreon stuff where we
Oh
get
yeah.
even more personal than these conversations. You know what I'm saying? We're not restrained by a lot of things that YouTube and some of these other places have us talk about. So I really so thank you guys for sticking in with us. And you can join by going to patreon.com/the greatest pod and checking us out. We got a $5 tier where you get extra pods. We got a $7 tier where you get those pods and art sent to your door. And I'll draw some dope stuff. Ron will draw some crap, send it out to you, and you'll love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, patreon.com/the greatest pod. And thank you guys for listening to another episode of The Greatest Pod.